Hiya, thank you so much for clicking on my channel. It is I, Anya, back with another video where I'm talking about William Golding. You probably would have heard of William Golding if you've done your GCSE in recent years or you've studied English literature in any capacity. He's of course the very famous author of Lord of the Flies, as well as a few other famous works such as The Spire and The Inheritors. He was of course knighted by Queen Elizabeth and won the Nobel Prize for Literature. So if you would like to read this book, serve this look, let's get into it. Hiya, welcome back to my actual face without the mask of makeup. So today we're going to talk about a very famous poet, especially if you've ever studied literature in any sort of context, and that is William Golding, best known for his novel Lord of the Flies, which I have right here. And today we're going to kind of use the cover of this for inspiration. I'm not going to do this every time because not all covers are pretty, but you got to admit, this is a pretty cover. So we've got kind of like a deep pink going into a deep blue, and then we've got this little here. I'm thinking maybe a halo eye, maybe a cut crease, we'll see. But I'm going to take inspiration from this book. So William Golding, or we could actually call him Sir William Golding, seeing as he was knighted by the Queen, or Sir William Gerald Golding, was born in 1911 on the 19th of September in Cornwall, but that's not where he was originally from. That was his grandmother's home. So I suppose I better get started actually putting some makeup on my face. So his father's name was Alec, not really a name you hear very often anymore. So he was called Alec Golding, and he was a secondary school teacher, or a master, I suppose you'd call it, of science in a grammar school. And I think that had a profound impact on William's life. Like, kind of, there was no escape, you know. His dad was the teacher at school and the teacher at home. And his mum, called Mildred, again, not really a modern name, was a profound activist. And she was really quite a prolific protester, and she worked with the suffragette movement, meaning that she was trying to fight for the women's right to vote. Everything that I've seen about William online, apart from in his later years, has actually been quite negative, believe it or not. So I'm just popping in some pore filling primer right now because my pores are large and in charge. They like to take over the show. And when I was researching, I noticed that a lot of resources kind of differed. So you had some that were very, very positive focused, and some that were kind of more truthful and showed a bit of negativity about his life. Some things that really shocked me actually and opened my eyes to factors in the book. One of the things that shocked me the most was the fact that he had actually assaulted a girl, a 15-year-old girl, sexually assaulted a 15-year-old girl when he was a teenager. He was a very frustrated child in that he really wanted to be a successful writer, and he attempted to write a novel at the age of 12. You know, casually write a novel at the age of 12. But obviously it wasn't like, you know, award-winning literature. And this really frustrated him, and he took his own frustration out on other children. So he ended up being, you know, a bully. And he admits this. He admits that later in his life, looking back, he knew that he was a brat, a selfish brat who just bullied others in a way to kind of get his own frustration out. He even was quoted of saying, "I enjoyed hurting people," which is quite a statement to make, really. But at least he knew what he was like. At least he understood his mistakes. So William went on to study natural sciences in university, but much like the last two writers that we've just done, that's not where his heart lay. His heart was calling out for writing and literature and those kind of studies. So I'm just concealing around my eyes right now because that is really the only place where I have any kind of darkness. So William transferred his major from natural sciences to literature and studied that instead, and then went on to actually teach literature. He started in, and I was really intrigued by this, I had no idea. He started off in Maidstone Grammar and then went on to teach in Salisbury. He had a break in his teaching career where he actually went and, he actually went and fought in World War II, very commendable, and he fought in the Navy. So he was out on sea a lot. He was known for being really fond of being out on the sea, for being a very talented sailor. And then he returned to teaching once that was over. Although it was said that he wasn't maybe a very successful teacher and that he learned more from his students than they learned from him. So next I'm going to set my face. I've done my foundation, I've done my concealer, I've done a little bit of contour, not the harshest because I want to do most of it with powder. So I use the RCMA loose powder for this. It's really handy. You get it in a huge tub, but you gotta pour it out to use it. So I am gonna bake today. I haven't baked in my last 2 videos, mainly because I'm terrified that somebody's gonna screenshot it and meme it, but I don't think I care. I'm really quite happy with what I'm doing right now with these videos, and if people want to make fun of it, then, you know, go wild. So with baking, the whole purpose is that it really sets that makeup in place. Usually people do it right under their eyes because you have all of them little fine lines, and usually that's where the makeup kind of starts to fade or starts to kind of cake together soonest. So you do it under your eyes like this and all the way kind of up to the temple. And then you do it here, kind of under where you're going to contour, and that gives it that nice sharp line, kind of imitating that I have a cheekbone. More powder. Okay, so right now it looks like I'm bioluminescent, and I know that you can probably see all the dust in the air from the powder I've just put on, but believe it or not, I'm actually going to leave this on because with baking you set it in place. So now that all of this powder is on, it's going to keep my makeup there. It's going to kind of absorb into it. I don't know the exact science behind it, but all I know is that it works. So while that's happening, I'm going to put on my eyebrows just to give it like that little bit of extra time and use my time wisely. So I mentioned that it's believed that maybe Golding wasn't the best teacher in the world, and that maybe he learned more from the students than they learned from him. And that comes from actual like stories told from his students. So he used to be known for like sitting in class, scribbling down stories on notepads, and he'd be taking everything in. He'd take in everything his students did and kind of use it as kind of ingredients in a story. And he even once went on a field trip with his students and famously put them against each other. So he had one half of the group be like the attackers and one half of the group be the defenders. Very, very similar to the plot in Lord of the Flies, like massively similar to the 2 groups of boys in Lord of the Flies, and just went and let them at it, see what would they do. Obviously he was able to step in before any proper damage was caused, but very interesting. And he called these his little scientific experiments, you know. As well as that, he was known for giving the boys in his class manuscripts or papers that he had written on, and he would get them to count how many words he had written, you know, that proper gritty English literature of counting. And through all of the negativity that he saw at war, and through the bullying and some of the negativity that he saw at school, William believed that he had really seen the darkness in life, probably more so at war than at school. But both of them had a huge role on his writing, and the fact there was a lot of darkness in his writing of what lay like beneath the facade of man. Very similar to Robert Louis Stevenson's Jekyll and Hyde, you know, the duality of man, how we've got a good side and a bad side, and how they're kind of constantly battling each other. Golding wrote a lot about this in his books. The one I'm most familiar with, obviously, is Lord of the Flies. I just have the book here, ready to whip out. And you get to see kind of the darkness of those boys when the parents aren't around, when the adults aren't there to kind of reel them back in. William said that war showed him what people were really capable of, and he was quoted by saying famously that man produces evil like a bee produces honey. Right, so I am sufficiently set, I think. So we're going to brush it off. Obviously you can't leave it like this, or I kind of just blend it in. So brush it off / blend it into the places that you weren't baking. Now I'm going to contour with powder and bronze with powder, because obviously that white powder, even though it's translucent, it does leave a bit of a cast. When I put the setting spray on it, it'll meld it all together. Why do I always get stuff on my hands? You know, I'm using brushes, I expect it to stay on the brushes. So William very famously is pictured a lot with a beard, and he didn't grow this beard until after his time in the Navy when he was a teacher. And the kids kind of lovingly referred to him as Scruff because of this beard, but it's been kind of analysed, I don't know whether it's been over-analysed, but it's been analysed that he grew this beard to kind of hide himself or shield himself from the world. To be honest, I think that might be a little bit over-analytical. Maybe the man just wanted to have a beard, you know. So in 1954, he wrote Lord of the Flies, but it wasn't actually called Lord of the Flies when he originally wrote it. It was called Strangers from Within. It had been rejected from other publishing houses over 20 times, and Golding was not enjoying the rejection. He was famously sensitive and quite vulnerable actually to what people thought of him, and especially his writing. Obviously it was his career, so if people weren't a fan of his writing, you know, he would get quite upset. It would really affect him, and he would kind of go into a bit of a dark place mentally. So originally the publishing house that did actually publish his work, I think they were called Faber, the woman who read it originally called it rubbish and dull, but there was a new editor kind of who had just been hired there, and he saw potential with it, and he contacted William and kind of suggested a load of edits, you know, being an editor. And he said, you know, we need to change the name, we need to take this out, we need to put this in. And by the end of it, it was this whole new creation that was the Lord of the Flies. Okay, time to highlight. Let's see what we got today. We got a pink one to match our pink eye look. A little bit of MAC on the high points here. Much easier the last video how I did it before I actually drew my eyebrows on, because the ends of my eyebrows are shaved off. Tip of the nose, cupid's bow, and the bridge. Okay, right, now it's time for the eyeshadow, and I'm scared. Nowadays people are super into putting blush across their nose. I think it's kind of like an anime kawaii type thing. So let's just, you can't beat them, like join them. Got a bit locked down. Oh, have I ruined it? Have I ruined it? Blend. Right, we're gonna get started on the eye look, which I got confused. I thought it was the other way around. I thought it was blue going into pink, but that's not how skies or sunsets work. So we're gonna start off with a deep pink going into maybe a light blue. I'm gonna put on a primer this time. I've forgotten the last two videos. So the primer that I use is the P. Louise base. It is really good. I thought it might have just been a bit of a gimmick when I first saw it online, but it is actually great. It works way better than concealer. Makes the colors really vibrant and stick on there and blend really well too. Even though it's wet, you think that when you put the powder on, it's just going to stick on there and go patchy, but no, it works. So I'm going to do similar to what I did in the last video, and that is do one eye on camera and then just go and do the other one and then magically have both done. I've got this amazing Stacey Marie palette here. It's got everything that I need. Right, let's start off with our pink. I'm probably going to get some fallout, but it's fine. I can just wipe it away. Look how pigmented that is. It's because of the P. Louise base. It's very pigmented anyway. Stacey Marie palettes are great. So when I was doing research on William Golding, I found that there's quite a lot of itchy nose, obviously. Quite a lot of interviews with his daughter Judith. So I thought that I'd bring up some of them and talk about his family life. So he married his wife Anne, and they had 2 kids together, who were David and Judith. Now, I've not really seen any interviews with David, but I read like 3 different interviews with Judith, so obviously she's quite comfortable with speaking about their life. In some of the interviews, she discusses the struggles that they had as a family. In particular, William's struggle with writing, with his vulnerability with critics, with his insomnia, and then in order to cure his insomnia, he really turned to drink, so his then kind of alcoholism and his problems with alcohol. Okay, so I'm going to start blending this out really subtle. Oh, I think we have a little guest, if you would like to meet our special guest. Look, we've got a lovely little kitty called Peanut. Hiya. Do you want to do your eyeshadow? No, you're too sleepy. That's okay, baby. It's okay. You can stay down there. So I get progressively light-handed and lighter-handed as I go up my lid. I'm going to go in with the trick that I taught you maybe in nearly my first video, where you go in with a clean brush afterwards to just kind of sweep over it to really get that blend impeccable. But pack, get all of the colour onto the lid, and then just very gently, so like not going like this, but just very, very gently working your way up the lid. I go in circles and in a windscreen wiper motion, which is what all of the MUAs say to do anyway. And usually they go and do the lid, like under the eyelid here after, but I do it while there's colour on the brush as well, just to save me going back afterwards. So I've not used tape this time or any sort of technique, I'm just going out. Okay, so that's the basic pink. Let's see how it matches up so far. Yeah, I would say that they look kind of similar. Right, let's get my blank brush and just do a little bit of extra blending just to make it look super smooth. Okay, so let's see. I would say that that's kind of a bluey purple colour. So I'm going to try and do that, and then I'll see if I can get a pinky highlight in there. So this one is very aptly named Sky. I'm going to use the same pink brush, and I'm going to get this blue. Yeah, it looks pretty pigmented. And I'm going to gently place that kind of on the rim of the pink. This could be a disaster. I hope it's not. And again, you just got to trust the process. It's going to look bad before it looks fab. And just bearing in mind the colour wheel, you know, when you mix pink and blue together, you get a purple. So I was going to add in purple, but it's going to make purple on its own. Okay, so I'm making a little kind of faux wing here with the blue, just so that you can really see the different shades, because it's going to mix with the pink and make a purple and a deep blue. So I'm gonna go through the pink again, really pack that on, blend out the blue. So I'm gonna get the clean makeup brush, the clean-ish makeup brush, and I'm just gonna blend out these edges. Okay, and then I'm just gonna bring the blue just down to the first half of the under eye. I'm gonna pop some highlight up here so this purple won't be kind of on its own randomly up there. Okay, I'm going to blend that out again with a clean brush. These are very bold colours we're using today, really. Okay, and I'm going to quickly go off and do the other eye. Then we're going to add a very nice gold highlight in the middle. That can be the sun in the sunrise. So this is what we've got so far. Now we just need to kind of neaten it up a bit and add the little sun. Okay, so all I've done so far is I did the exact same on this side, and then I took some concealer and a little flat brush, and I just cut around here in kind of a wing. So I'm going to do that now and probably not talk because it is really painstaking. You've got to take your time. So it's kind of like the opposite to a cut crease. So with a cut crease, you draw it out first of all and then fill it in. Here you can be slightly more messy and then you cut it out with concealer. Okay, now I'm just going to blend out some of the blue that I kind of got rid of there with the concealer. And then just patch up both sides to make sure they actually match. So make sure that the pink is kind of... So the pink here is much stronger than here. The blue here is much stronger than here. Just kind of make sure that they match. Again, you got to trust the process. Once you put some eyeliner on... Right now, it does look like I'm a bit of a panda. But once you put some eyeliner on and some lashes and some lipstick, it will bring it all together. Okay, so I'm going to pat on some highlight onto the high places of my brow bone here, just so that it sets the concealer down that I've just used. So I'm going to use the same highlighter that I did on my cheekbones. And it's got that tiny bit of a pink hue to it to hopefully bring all the look together. And then on my inner corners, the exact same. Usually this highlight picks up a lot more. So actually, before we do liner, we got to do the little sun that I said that was here. And I'm going to do this with kind of a goldy glitter colour here in my Too Faced palette. And just to tie it all together and sound super cringe, we'll talk about the sunset of his life from the sunset colour in this eye. Oh, wow, that's a strange consistency. That kind of moved like jelly the second I touched it. Beautiful though. So I'm just going to pop this right in the centre of my lid. And kind of like what I did in the last eye, like concentrated in the centre and then diffused along the outside. And that to me looks quite like a sunset on the water if you think about it. Diffused along the outside. I'm going to use my other cleaner fingers to help diffuse that out. So concentrated in the middle and then diffused along the outside. Not as diffused as I want it on that side, so I'll make it slightly more concentrated down here. You can pop a little bit of concealer on the middle to make it really stand out, but you don't really need to with glitters. Okay, so I've just got some glitter here. I'm gonna get some gold. Maybe this might make no difference whatsoever, but let's... Wow, look at that. Okay, let's tap on top. Layer glitters. and tap on top. It's nice. We've got kind of an orangey gold mixed with a yellow gold. Okay, so I'm going to put my liquid liner over this. You got to make sure when you've got glitter that it's a very kind of loose liquid liner and that it's probably in a pot, because if it's a pencil, it'll mix all up with the actual like chunks of glitter and it'll dry out. So here's a tip. So we're not going to follow my tip of starting halfway across the lid, because in fairness, this look is very in your face. So let's just go the whole hog. Why not? So see what I mean about the glitter there? Like you have to have a really liquid liner in order to get across that glitter. I'm not going to do a wing on this because obviously the blue in itself is a massive wing. So I'm just going to taper that off there. And I'll be back with the other eye. So I just realised that I said I would do the sunset eye while talking about the sunset of his life, and I did not, because I was too focused on getting all that glitter up on there. So I'm just going to talk about some of his family life towards kind of his latter years. So thankfully, after the sales of Lord of the Flies, he was able to quit teaching altogether and really focus on the passion of his life, which was writing. But then because he was so sensitive and so vulnerable, he really struggled with any sort of critique on his work at all. And his daughter Judith actually like recalls them listening to the radio when like a critique would come on, and he would like leave the room and even weep when some kind of critique was said of his book, and it really affected him. He was like really sensitive, really thin-skinned in relation to his books, which I suppose makes sense because they're like works of art, works of his soul. And he used to hate it, and he used to, well, think about it, his very first book was rejected over 20 times, so that probably stuck with him throughout his life. So as I mentioned previously, he struggled with alcoholism, which was probably an onset from insomnia because he couldn't sleep and he turned to drink in order to sleep. And he admitted to actually hitting his wife, abusing his wife, pulling her around as he called it, a few times when he was drunk and saying some really nasty things. So he obviously wasn't a very nice drunk, not that many people are. But it's said that from this drink, he again saw the darkness. I'm again going to use finger quotes. He saw the darkness in man. So kind of like when he was at war, it was said that he saw, you know, the true nature of man. When he worked at school with kind of teenagers, he saw the evil, the true nature of man. And then as a heavy drinker, he saw the true nature of man. And he obviously struggled a lot with kind of this uncovering of the truth behind society and kind of how we can be evil deep down and that kind of thing. So it's really interesting to think about. Right, I'll be back with lashes. So 20 years after retiring from teaching, William was given the Nobel Prize for Literature. And he was knighted by Queen Elizabeth II. And then in 1993, William passed away of a heart attack in Cornwall, which is where he was born. So I learned so much from doing a little bit of investigating into William's life. I had known the basics, obviously, from teaching the book and teaching a little bit of context, but I had no idea kind of about the darker side to his life, you know, the assault on a 15-year-old girl when he was a teenager, the alcoholism, the insomnia. There's quite a divided community out there when talking about the history of William. Some very obviously leave out the darker parts of his history while some focus on it. So you can see there's maybe a little bit of bias towards it. And that brings us to the end of this look. This was a difficult one, I'm not going to lie. I'm not used to doing this kind of this look, this kind of cutout eye, but I quite enjoyed it. So we'll just give one last comparison to the book and see how I did. Yeah, I'm happy with that. We've got the sun, we've got the pink, and we've got the blue. So thank you so much for tuning in to me, Makeup and Metaphors. Did you read a book? Did you serve a look? I did both, so get with it. Your turn. Read the book, serve the look, tag me, Makeup and Metaphors. And hopefully I'll see you again next Sunday. Thank you. Oh, before that, make sure to like, comment and subscribe because it looks really good in my engagement. Thank you very much.